Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux here with Mike Beer of the Daily Racing Form. Going to take a look at a graded stakes race this weekend up at Woodbine. Race number 9 on Saturday is the Grade 2 Kennedy Road, 6 furlongs on the Tapeta. And Mike, a big field here of 10 top to bottom, but it's a pretty wide open event. Some horses, I think, going to take some pressure early on, could maybe set this race up for maybe a couple of the closers in here.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. I mean, I thought this was a fairly wide open race. I realize we have a relatively, clear-cut favorite on the morning line, Patches O'Houlihan. He's a hard horse to knock. It seems like he always wins, but he is a speed. And I kind of agree with you. I feel like this pace could be pretty fast.
Yeah, he obviously has early foot. Look at his resume, especially this year, 6 for 6, but even some others in here. Rock Crust is no slug out of the gate. He likes to be involved. And I do think that the pace could be hot in here. And looking at the time form US pace projections here, you can see there might be a little bit of a scramble early on. We've talked about Patches O'Houlihan and Rock Crust. The other horse towards the inside is Jazz Hands, who I think, Mike, at least from a pace perspective, could muddy things up early on and really is taken to the Tapeta up at Woodbine.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it kind of feels like his hand is just forced from the inside. I do think the 7 and the 9, they might just be faster than him anyway. But Jazz Hands probably has to go. His 2 races on the all-weather here this year, they're fine. He almost won both times. I just, personally didn't see his excuses not to win at least one of those races. And this pace feels like it's going to be a lot faster than the ones he had to contend with in those spots.
As we mentioned, the pace looks to be hot. Just to note the late pace flag on the number 10, Ice Chocolat, who's typically been closing and picking up the pieces. Did that last time out on the turf course. Now getting it onto the synthetic. So we'll kick this field off with the number 1, Jazz Hands. And Mike, you alluded to it. This is a horse that has been kind of knocking at the door of a victory on the Tapeta up at Woodbine. Just hasn't been able to do so. And those races arguably against lesser.
Yeah, just didn't see his excuses in those races. He ran fine, but he was also loose on the lead both times. And seems like he's not getting loose in here against a better field.
The number 2, Flag of Honor, the Australian bred, is the son of American Pharoah. We'll take a look at that most recent effort, that first start since coming to North America. And this was a horse that was really hyped up at Woodbine. A lot of people were kind of curious to see this one make the North American debut. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, Mike. I thought it was a good run, but still would have liked to seen this one offer a little bit more in those final stages.
Yeah, me too. I mean, man, I could go either way on this horse in here. I guess at the 10-1 morning line, I'm supposed to stay positive on him. Boy, he had a real shot to win this race. Everything worked out perfectly for him with the trip, and it looked like he was going to win. And I don't know, maybe the layoff just got him a little bit at the end there, and he couldn't quite finish it off. I don't know. I could go either way on him. I'll wait and see what kind of price he is.
Yeah, the one thing I can also maybe point out is the break out of the gate. Probably not ideal, and that's something that we see with horses making their first start in North America. The number 3, Dream Shake, is where we'll land next. We'll take a look at another replay. The Grade 2 Near Arctic this year was a scramble in the end. I mean, a lot of horses with chances here, Mike, at the top of the lane. And I think Dream Shake overall runs pretty well here to finish 5th, beaten by a neck. But another one that maybe today does get, in this spot, I should say, some pace help.
Yeah, it could set up really well for him here. He runs fine in this race. I don't really know what to make of this New Arctic. You get these races where there's 8 horses across the course here at the finish. They're all, in the photo, basically. I don't know what to do with races like this. He ran fine in here. I like him as a horse overall. He did win his only start on this surface earlier in the year, but he also was just absolutely loose that day on a really slow pace. So I don't know what to make of that race either. I like him as a horse. I think 6-1 on the morning line is very fair on him, and I think that's a bettable price on this horse. I'll wait and see what kind of price he goes off at, but I think he's a major player.
He seems to be training well, and just to note, Near Arctic was won by Big Invasion, so we know how he fared on Breeders' Cup weekend out at Santa Anita. And Ice Chocolat ends up finishing 3rd there, but it was a scramble, like you said. How do you really decipher much into that, especially at the top of the stretch when 100 and some to 1 shot was on the lead? It's tough to make a lot of sense out of that race. Now, the number 4, War Bomber, this one out of the Norm McKnight barn, has disappointed in his last several, and just looking at his peak form, I'm curious to get your thoughts. He seemed like he really hit his best in the middle of summer, and since then has fallen flat.
That's how I looked at him too. I think he's a good horse. I'm concerned that it feels like his form maybe tailed off a little bit. He was bad last time, and I didn't really see his huge excuse in that race. And I also think it's fair to wonder, whether 6 furlongs is a great distance for this horse. I know he's been good at 7, and he's been good around a 1-turn mile. 6 might be a little short for him.
And he is coming back off a short rest. November 5th was that dull effort. But maybe that's a positive sign as well. I think you can go either way. Short rest usually means maybe they had an excuse last time out. The number 5, McLean's Posse. This one trained by Josie Carroll was able to get that first win of 2023 last time out. We'll take a look at this effort. Pretty dominant performance. And the fractions, Mike, they weren't necessarily soft throughout. And this one was forwardly placed.
Yeah, I mean, they just put him right on the lead in here, and he never really faced a serious challenge, and he wins pretty convincingly at the end. I don't know that he's good enough to beat this field, but I do think it's probably a good sign. Listen, Josie Carroll knows what she's doing, and she wants to step this horse right up in class off of what is pretty clearly the best race of his life. I think that's got to be a good sign.
Yep, a 86 Buyer speed figure, just his second highest figure, but a really nice performance, especially when this horse was kind of hanging in his prior races and not being able to get the job done. Put it all together back on October 22nd. Now, the number 6, Sky's Not Falling, another price in here coming out of those races out of the Mid-Atlantic for Michael Trombetta. Has been in those restricted races for Maryland breds, most recently on Maryland Million Day. He's a closer, but it just looks like when you go down the page, he leaves a little to be desired.
He's a tough call in here. I kind of wanted to stay positive on him, just mostly because I'm sort of looking for prices in here and what I think is a wide open race. I think his last 2 races are pretty good. I think he did run better than it looks in his most recent start without a great trip. He just missed 2 back. And it just feels like he's better this year than maybe he's ever been in his life. It's interesting to note also, they've run this horse twice on all-weather surfaces in his career. As a 2-year-old, he was stakes placed as a 2-year-old, his only start on the all-weather. It's the fastest race that he ran as a juvenile. And they ran him on it once up here as a 3-year-old, and he finished a decent 4th in a stakes race. I don't know. I think at a big price, I could use this horse because the race might set up well for him. And I just don't have a great feeling about the shorter prices in this race.
I think it's worth noting too, his last 2, he's been at 5 and 5.5, and 6 should certainly help him. They've tried different things with him, and lately they've gotten him back to sprinting. And 2 back, I thought the effort was obviously the better of the 2, but last time out he was slow out of the gate. So hopefully he gets a little bit of the pace setup that he needs. And one of those horses that might aid him is the number 7 Rock Crest. As we've seen time and time again, he wants to be forwardly placed in his last 2. He hasn't been able to get a big piece by any means, but we saw in the Near Arctic, he was on the top of, at the top of the stretch, he was on the lead. He surrendered late, got a 97 Buyer speed figure for that effort back on October 8th.
Yeah, he ran well that day. He's mainly the reason I have a problem with the horses that are coming out of that in the Arctic, which was the bunch finish, because he was over 100 to 1. He might have run the best race that day. I mean, he was right up after the pace took over, and then the closers finally got him, but it was really late in there. He didn't run as well last time. I don't know, man. I don't like him that much in this race, and I don't like his running style for this race, but he's far from impossible as far as I can tell.
And his 2 wins this year have both been on the synthetic up at Woodbine. Now, the number 8 Ironstone is a horse that, as a 3-year-old, had a really nice campaign and fared well in several of the races that we see. Was 4th in the Queen's Plate after being part of that early pace scenario. Would be 2nd behind Duke of Love and the Prince of Wales. And we've only seen him a handful of times since then.
Yeah, that's true. And he's off to a late start this year, which I guess could be an issue for him. And there's another layoff coming into this. But this horse was good. He was good as a 2-year-old as a sprinter. He was good as a 3-year-old when they stretched him out. And I thought he ran deceptively well. His only start on the all-weather this year off the layoff, there was no pace in that race. He was last early. He was trying to make a run in there. I didn't think he ran poorly at all. And I'll just, go on the assumption that he just didn't like the turf last time because that wasn't a good performance. They're back to the surface that he likes here. I like him as a sprinter. He's supposed to have some pace in front of him here. I don't know. I thought he was pretty interesting at a price.
Yeah, in that race, 2 back, he had some trouble out of the gate, and obviously he'll have to face Ice Chocolate again, but Anarchist has turned out to be a nice horse as well. So I agree with you, Mike. I think if you really keen on that race, 2 back, yes, it was back in May. He's a little bit of a wild card in here, and he's 15 to 1 on the morning line. I don't think he's going to take a lot of love.
Yeah, I don't either. He does go for a low percentage barn as well, which I guess could be a little bit of a concern, but at the price he's going to be, that's not supposed to matter.
Opposite, though, of a big price would be a short price. That's going to be the number 9, Patches O'Houlihan, as we alluded to. 6 for 6 this year as a 3-year-old. We'll take a look at his most recent win. And to me, this is actually a time where we have to see him work for it. He was facing older horses in this race, in the Vigil. And, it's not clear at this point if he's going to be able to get the job done in here. You see Rock Crest is in the race, a couple of his other friends that he's faced time and time again, but he finds another gear here. And to me, this is what he had kind of needed to show as a 3-year-old, then tackling older.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, maybe you want to give him a little bit of extra credit there just for having to work so hard to get by Rockcrest and then still holding on at the end. It's another good performance for him. I find him hard to knock, especially on this surface. I will just say, you do have, this is a horse who likes to be involved early. This pace could be fast. There's one race on his page where he didn't get anywhere near the lead after a poor start, and he did not run well that day. This pace is supposed to be fast. Maybe it works against him.
And a horse that might benefit from the hot pace is the number 10 Ice Chocolate, who was closing very strongly last time out in the near Arctic. I mean, his resume says that the talent's there. They've put him in grade one events repeatedly. They've handled him in a way that he's been in some tough spots, Mike, but it's been a while since he's found the winner's circle.
Yeah, and it's a real problem, especially if he's going to be around that 3-1 morning line. I mean, he always shows up and runs pretty well. He just happens to not win very often. That's a problem for me for a horse who's going to be a short price. I like his recent form, actually. I thought he ran really well a couple of times at Saratoga this summer. I thought he ran well last time, even though I'm kind of trying to avoid the horses out of that in the Arctic. He can win here. I'm not sure I'd want to take him at a short price.
And it's interesting to see him back on the synthetic up at Woodbine. He's only raced over it twice and 2 runner-up finishes to bode from those performances. So he's 3-1 on the morning line. I think a lot has to do with the class and maybe the pace set up for him. But we know Patches O'Houlihan is going to likely be the favorite in this field of 10. And I'm curious to see who you went on with your top spot, because it seems like, you might go against the favorites here, and that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I really struggled. I thought this was a really tough race. I didn't really know where I wanted to go in here. I just ultimately didn't want any of the short prices in here, Ashley. So I'm going to take a little shot with Ironstone and hope that, getting back to sprinting is what he wants, and that he'll be ready off the layoff here and can get the right trip in this race. I actually kind of feel like the horse you had on top, who I almost picked on top as well, Dream Shake. I'm going to use him around that 6-1. I feel like I could argue that in some ways he could be the horse to beat in here.
That's kind of my thought process here in terms of I think he's tactical enough he can set the trip just off of it. I know he was pretty far back last time out, and it still worked out fairly well for him. It could have been a little bit better had he maybe cracked the top 3, but I thought it was a good effort. I'm excited to see him back on the Tapeta up at Woodbine. I think that's a huge plug for me, and I can't use Patches O'Houlihan here just from the price and the fact that I think the pace is going to be really hot and it's a big field. I could see the pace falling apart. So we're both going to try to beat some of the favorites in here. You go with the 15-1 shot on top with the number 8 Ironstone. I go with the 3 Dream Shake. Mike's top 4 picks: 8, 6, 3, 10, and for me it's the 3, 9, 2, 10. And as you can see, it's a wide open edition of this year's Kennedy Road. Good luck.